Before you hit the bridge, it says, "Welcome to Rikers Island," and then you go on the bridge, and it's just like, it was the daytime, but it felt dark.
When they start to drive across the bridge, I realized how long it was, and I could see Rikers Island as we came over the hill.
I'm just going across the bridge, and I'm just looking at it, and I'm just like, the whole time, shaking my head in disbelief.
On that bus, is so much stuff going through my mind, but the main thing is just that, hoping that I do make it out.
It looked grim, like it looked like a monster. Like we were about to go into the belly of, a beast.
New York City is, to me, the greatest city on earth. But when you look across that bay onto Rikers Island, that's not living, that's just existing. I felt like I wasn't. I felt like I'm here and nobody cares.
My name is Ismael Nazario from Brooklyn, New York. September 28, 2006, I was arrested for robbery. I was actually on my way to school. I was like, you know what, when I get to Atlantic Avenue, I'm gonna walk by the park to see who's in the park. Big mistake. The first two cops that got out the car, they drew their guns on me. They said, well, this kid I was like, well, a robbery just happened. This kid got hurt pretty badly, and you fit the description. I'm standing there with all these police standing, surrounding me, but I'm standing there confident, though, because I know that I didn't do it. I wasn't even over here. So the cop peeks his head into the driver's side window. He peeks his head back out. He said, yeah, that's him, lock him up.
When I first got there, it was almost like flying over the Bermuda Triangle. Like, once you're there, it's easy to get there, but it's hard as hell to get out.
Once you get there, you find out that it's actually just as bad as people say that it was.
There's this distinct smell of Rikers Island. It's like a mix of bleach, dirt, and grime. The bars, it look dirty and dusty, and the cells look nasty.
The officers just said, for all of you who've been here, you already know what to expect. For those of you who have not been here before, this is your first time, tying your pants.
They got us inside the door, closed the gate behind us, unshackled, took the cuffs off, sent us in a room. They came in, strip searches, which was just like crazy to me because this is my first time ever getting strip searched in a room full of men. And it just was like, I couldn't believe this was happening.
Oh, man, the worst part is just the strip frisk. Having another man tell you to lift your nuts up, spread your ass and all that, get butt-ass naked, lift your arms up. You think about that, man, oh my God, I never want to go back to that.
Coming off the streets, never been in an environment like that, just thrown in basically to the wolves. I was scared.
You walk in, you're in between these two doors. You see like this gate, and then on the other side of that is the day room, and then there's other adolescents on the other side. They're looking through the gate, and their mind, it's like, oh, we got a victim or, fresh meat.
So a bunch of these, kids just start ganging up on the door, and I'm looking at them, and I'm looking at myself. I was like, these not kids, these is men. Some people don't make it past the door. I made it to my bed, at least.
I went to Rikers Island with a friend of mine, and he had already been back and forth to Rikers Island, and this was my first experience. And when I got into the day room of the house where we was at, my friend was with me, luckily, and we were sitting there talking, and all of a sudden I seen him stand up and walk to the corner of the day room, and I couldn't understand what was happening, and when I turned around, there were two guys coming to take my sneakers. I assumed that my friend and we were gonna fight together, but it was just me fighting at the time. They wound up getting one of my sneakers, and I black eye and busted lip and everything. And after it was over, I went to him and I said, what happened? And later on that night, he bought me back my other sneaker, and he said to me, he said, I had to know that you could stand up for yourself before I stand up for you. And so that was my induction into the way things ran on Rikers Island.
My name is Damian James Stapleton. I'm 29 years old. I grew up in the Bronx, and I moved immediately to Harlem to live with my grandmother. My mom was addicted to crack cocaine, and she would always be gone. I was abused as a kid in pretty much any way you can think of, you know? My grandmother would beat me. I have scars to this day on my head from my grandmother, like, abusing us, you know, physically, just from being under the influence of alcohol. I remember my mother coming, you know, just popping up, taking us out. She had money. She went to buy us some clothes one time, and we went to the store, and she bought us some clothes, and she was like, you know, take those clothes off. And I must have been about 4 or 5. And we took the clothes off to put the new clothes on, and she seen the webs on us that my grandmother had put on us and the marks from beating us so much. And she wanted to do the right thing. She took us to the hospital. But I guess when she got there, it was so overwhelming for her. She left. She never came back. My mental disorder diagnosis is unspecified personality disorder, mind and mood disorder, and anxiety disorder. I knew something was wrong with me because I could never sleep at night. One night I couldn't sleep, and there was this guy just talking. He just came in. So I asked this guy to be quiet numerous times, and we got into a disagreement about the noise. So I felt like I wanted to get him in the morning. When the morning came, being that he was up talking all night, he was sleeping when they opened up the cells. I went to his head with the sock and the batteries.
I didn't want to take psych medication because I felt like that was tantamount to using drugs, street drugs. So I refused all medications. I wouldn't take any. I don't think people should be drugged up or beat or deprived of food because that's what they used to do. I think that sometimes you just need a shoulder to lean on, or someone to talk to, or someone to cry to, because it's like you're letting out a whole load. There was no one to talk to.
The treatment that I saw for people with mental health issues came from both sides of the wall, meaning the employees and the correction officers, as well as the inmates. They were abused and treated so disgustingly that my stomach would turn. You would see them in the reception, holding cells, and they'd be in there playing and eating roaches. Or they'd be in there taking their sandwich and wiping it on the floor before they eat it, you know, or they're sitting there playing around the toilet bowl. I watched this one guy piss on a mental health dude laying in his bed. Like, literally just walk up to him and just take out his dick and start pissing on him. When you see people like this, you would say to yourself, damn, leave that guy alone.
People who are incarcerated don't talk, they scream. Everybody screams at each other. There's no normal talking. And you get moved into this little closet-sized room, and you have to pass through this metal detector. Then they move you to this other room cell. It's very medieval. It's everything is painted that battleship gray. Everything. And then there's this stainless steel toilet in the room, if it works. And all these women. And I was literally cowering in the corner. This one woman was laying on the floor, and she had her hair piled up on top of her head. I guess she rolled over or whatever it was, and all of a sudden these things rolled on the floor, kind of like white, I want to say sugar cubes, little white rocks. And all the girls just jumped on it. It was like And I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh my, what's going on? And they're all scrambling, but they're trying to be quiet because they didn't want the officers to know. It turned out the woman had hidden crack in her hair, and when she laid down to sleep, the crack had fallen out. That was the first time I ever saw crack.
When you in jail, complete upside down kingdom. Everything that means something to us here doesn't mean there. And everything in there that's negative and what you shouldn't be doing, it means everything. My name is Marcel Neal, 34 years old. And when I first went to Rikers, I was 14 years old. And at that point, it was like you go back to being a child now. From a 14-year-old in the streets, and you think you're tough to being a child. You want to call your mother. You want to call everybody you can possibly call to get you out of there.
So they had this setup called like the program. 2, 3, or 4 inmates ran the house.
The program is, you're gonna do what we tell you to do when we tell you to do it, or we're gonna beat your ass and you out of here.
So there's like a chain of command. So there's the people that run the housing unit. Those are the 2 top or 1 top person that is like in control of everything. Then it's the team, which is the enforcers. Then after the team, there's either a designated person that's in control of the day room, where you play your cards, your chess, watch TV. Then there's people that have rocking spots. The people that have the rocking spots are people that don't want to necessarily have the house, be on the team, or have the day room, but they fought and earned their respect to just rock in the house where they could just pretty much do what they want to do. And then the bottom of the totem pole is what they called day room dummies. So the day room dummies was the guys that give up their phone calls, give up their commissary, have to ask permission to leave the day room, either to go to their bed or to use the bathroom.
So I was approached by the person that had the house, and he said, well, when you go to commissary, you have to give me 2 meals, and if you don't have any money, then you gotta give me your phone calls on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or you gotta like wash my clothes.
When I went in the bathroom in the morning to brush my teeth, I saw the other kids that were washing people's underwear, and I didn't want to be one of those kids. They got treated badly. As soon as I walked into the house, one of the guys who was running the house slid a plastic bucket down the aisle in front of me and said, "That's your new job, washing people's underwear." So I picked the bucket up and smashed him across the face.
So one of the guys came to me and said, my name is so-and-so, this is my house. If you're gonna stay here, this is the program. By the time I'm explaining you what the program is, you're gonna tell me if you're with it or if you're not. So I'm hearing all of this stuff, right? And I'm sitting on the bed now, I'm sitting down just like this, and I'm just looking up at them. He's like, so you with the program or you not with the program? Thought about it for a second. I was like, nah, I can't do that. I can't do that. He was like, all right, no problem. I thought he was just gonna walk off. But that was like what they call the 52 fake. So thought he was acting as if he was walking off, and then he just turned around and just hit me. Then they jumped me, right? Now, mind you, there was a C.E.O. working on the floor. She was sitting right there watching. So for about a good, I wanna say, it felt longer than it really was, but it probably, in all reality, it was probably only about a minute of them jumping me. She started, all right, that's enough, y'all. He had enough. She was like, you good? I was like, yeah, I'm all right. She's like, you sure you good? She's like, you don't want to go to the infirmary or nothing, right? You gonna hold it down? I was like, hold it down? That was a term I never heard. But then, of course, unfortunately, having to adapt to that lifestyle, the term holding it down means you're not gonna say anything to anybody.
In order for you to kind of be successful in that type of environment, you have to manifest a certain form of wickedness. I'm thankful that, for the most part, I didn't succumb to, certain emotions as far as becoming what I didn't want to become. And the end result was I got cut, because I didn't acquiesce to the demands of, the brothers running the house.
I had brand new Reebok Classics. This was like the 3rd night I was there, and 3 dudes came up to where my bunk was at and asked me for my sneakers. And I just gave them my sneakers. And that was a big mistake. Next thing you know, I went to commissary, they stole my commissary, stole all my belongings. Fortunate for me, there was this older dude, he schooled me, he told me, listen, you can't do that. You show weakness here, and you're dead, you know, you're not gonna make it. I grew up into Roman Greco wrestling. I'm a black belt in a couple of arts. So my father always taught me, you know, I got you in this for discipline. I don't want you to hurt somebody unless somebody tries to hurt you. So that was a big debate for me because I didn't want to hurt nobody. I could, but I didn't want to hurt nobody, but I had no choice. The first thing I did was get my sneakers back. I went and got all my commissary back. I went and got all my jeans, all my shirts, all my t-shirts, all my underwear, all my socks. I went and got everything that they took from me back. And I had to bust a couple of heads to get it back. It was either gonna be me or them. And I had to do this in order to gain my respect.
I learned to befriend people and get close to them in order to find out their weaknesses. So that's I just waited for my time to present itself. And it was early in the morning and they was giving out jelly. Yeah, like an apple jelly. And he tried to give me like a small portion. So I waited for him to come out, got in the shower, and that's when I attacked him. I went full force at him, whooped his ass, and I was just climbing the ranks steadily. Steadily.
You know, I heard all types of stories about, you know, people switch up on you when you know, there's one way in society and then in jail they're another way. They could be your friend out there and be your enemy in here, or be your friend in here and be your enemy out there.
Somebody who you think is going to be your friend, they manipulate you. They knew that my husband came every week. They knew that he bought clothes for me, magazines, books. They know that he put money on my account so that I could go shopping in commissary. You will put on your account a phone number for them so that they can call. If they want to use the phone and you're on the phone, you hang up. They would say, I want you, buy this for me on commissary, buy this for me, And when you came back from commissary, they were waiting for you. My name is Kathy Morse. I'm originally from Livingston, New Jersey, which is a middle-class suburb. I graduated from college with a bachelor's degree in criminal law and justice. I always wanted to work with returning citizens. That's what we call them. We don't call them ex-offenders. They're returning citizens. I was hired to work for a very large law firm in Manhattan, and they trained me. And that's how I got my start. And I continued to work as a trust and estates paralegal until my incarceration. Shortly after returning to work, after I had my third child, we were facing eviction from our house. There was one trust that I was handling. It was a very large trust. And they had pre-signed wire instructions. So I took the pre-signed wire instructions and I whited out the account number, put my own personal bank account number there, and faxed it over. And they just wired the funds into my account. $283,000. I missed a court date. And I thought that my court date was postponed, and evidently it wasn't. And I was just running errands around town, and the police pulled me over. And they said that they had a warrant out of New York for my arrest. My daughter was in her car seat, and she became hysterical, just screaming. And they took my daughter and I to the police station. They let me hold her with one arm, and my other arm was shackled to a bench. I was remanded to Rikers Island.
Immediately, within like 15, 20 minutes of being inside the holding cell for that building, a red light starts spinning. Guys that already been here are like, that's a red dot. Red dot meaning either something popped off, meaning somebody got cut, somebody got stabbed, somebody got hurt, somebody committed suicide, or a guard got hurt. Seen a kid come out, bloody, ambulance, in the stretcher. Immediately I started to think, I'm not thinking about where I'm going anymore, getting any sleep. I'm thinking about how am I gonna get my first weapon. So I asked somebody it was the easiest way to get a weapon. You know what he tells me? Off the fan. I look over in the corner, it's a fan right over there. Next thing I see next to the fan is a box of tissues. I'm thinking, man, how am I gonna get to that fan? Because I need to make an ice pick off of that, with that thing. And when they finally called my name, as soon as I came out, I was like, officer, can I grab some tissue? And when I went over to the fan, I don't know how I did it, but I snatched it right on off.
It's gladiator school for real. If you get there and you don't have a weapon to defend yourself, you have an issue.
Violence rules, predator prey. That never changes.
I'm in a situation where I can't run from. But my whole time in the streets, that's all I ever been doing is fighting. So I'm looking like I'm in a place where I always trained for, but just didn't know it.
The sad part is the alternative to violence is more violence. And when somebody realizes that you're willing to be more violent than they are less prone to be violent.
They taught me how to use a level of violence that I could never imagine I was capable of doing.
Sucker, say some slick, I turned around, because at that time there's like the old school phone where you could plug it in and unplug the joint. I unplugged it and made him eat the phone. I punched him all through his mouth.
Every time I turned around, somebody was getting cut or stabbed. You know, there was no rhyme or reason for it. It was total chaos, it was violence, it was everything I desired, everything that I look forward to in my life, coming from foster home to boys' home and jail. And so I fit right in. My name is Barry Campbell. I'm 49 years old. I was born in England. I came to America in 1972. When I came to America, I started getting into trouble. I was fighting a lot. And one day the teacher came to address me because I was fighting with another student, and I spun and hit her in the head with a chair. I was addicted to drugs at a very early age, at the age of 8. I started doing burglaries at the age of maybe 12, 13. We were terrorizing downtown Brooklyn at the time. My mother went into court and said that she couldn't control me anymore. So from that point on, I became what I call a systems baby. I went from foster home, boys' home, jail, to prison. When I first got to the foster home, I was physically, sexually, mentally abused. The boys' home was even worse. There was rampant sexual molestation going on by the counselors and the older people that were up there. There was violence, there was drugs, there was extortion. We got an allowance every Saturday. There were certain people that went around every Saturday taking other people's allowance. We got sneaker vouchers, clothes vouchers. If you couldn't fight to keep your voucher or your money, then you were gonna lose it. So that chaos that I ran into on Rikers Island was just going back home to the boys' home for me.
In the dorm, the beds are, all lined up, but they're also screwed into the floor, so they don't move. They're metal. And there were 2 girls who were having a disagreement over something. I don't even know what it was. It was probably something really dumb. And the one girl literally jumped on the girl, got her on the floor, had her under the bed, and was holding her hair and banging her head up and down, hitting the one side on the concrete and the other side on the frame of the bed. And we were all standing there screaming, saying, "Stop, don't do this." If we interfered with the fight, we would get a ticket. So we really couldn't do anything. And in the meantime, there's blood, and you can smell it, and you hear the flesh. And that smell of blood, I can't, sometimes it gets into me and I just can't get rid of that smell. I can't get rid of it. And the officers just stood there and watched this go on. And I have never felt so helpless.
So there was this time where we were in the dorm and these 2 guys got into it. And one of them were like, he wasn't a tough guy, but he had food and they were pretty much trying to take his food. And I seen him go to the C.E.O. and tell the C.E.O. like, yo, I can't live here. So the C.E.O. was like, well, pack your stuff and put it on the gate. So he went back and he sat on his bed, he packed all his stuff. The guys were forming around him. They're moving in suspicious ways. Not making a circle around him, but they're moving in suspicious ways. And there's pretty much one who's just keep going to mess with him. He could fight and he could beat this kid, but he didn't want to. He didn't want to fight. He just wanted to be left alone. He wanted to go to court. He wanted to make it home. And he grabbed his bag and he was making his way to the door. And the kid went and grabbed a cup, a green steak cup, and filled it up with hot water and threw it all in his face. and burned him. And burned him. And when he did that, the kid reached in his face and he pulled the rest of his face off.
My name is Raymond Yu. I'm 34 years old, born in Lower East Side, Manhattan. I got into trouble as a child. I was in and out the system, like Spofford, group homes, detention centers. So before I went to Rikers Island, I was already like seasoned. I was on the phone. And I was relatively new to the house. I had court the next day. So I called my mother and somebody taps me from behind. And I was like, yo, you can't use that phone. I was just like, yo, get away from me, yo. And then I'm talking to my mother. And then I felt somebody like come behind me and like he grabbed me from the back first. And then like I felt like this, but then I kind of rolled with it. I was like this, and my mother was on the phone, like, I could hear her like, what's going on, what's going on, what's going on? And I knocked the razor out of his hand, we're fighting. And then the officers come out, seeing clearly I was cut. And she said, well, do you need medical attention? I'm cut. I said, no, I don't need medical attention. Because like, you know, it's protocol in there. We handle it ourselves.
I was assaulted in the shower by 4 inmates, and they were determined to teach me a lesson. They heard that I was a snitch. I was sexually assaulted. I wanted to die. No, I did not report it. You can't report it. I would lay in my bed at night, and my dad was deceased. And I would lay in bed at night and have conversations with him. How I wanted to come up with him. How I wanted to be safe.
I've seen men rape other men. I've seen men who were deprived of sexual relationships with their significant others prey on other individuals.
It took a lot of strength to not just to not do certain things to people, man. Although it was the norm in that environment. I had a lot of spiritual protection. You know, there were people that were there that you know, really helped me out in certain ways that I've never forgotten. I actually became a gang member because I thought it was something that would kind of counter the oppression that, you know, society put me under. I really believed that. I didn't find out until later, you know, after, you know, joining, you know, this quote-unquote organization that, you know, we kind of did the dirty work for these, you know, demonic spirits.
My name is Reverend Hector Bienvenido Custodio. Everybody calls me Benny for short. Born on July 12, 1970 in East New York, Brooklyn.
I'm actually one of the original founding members of one of the most feared gangs here in New York City, the Latin Kings. I was the second in command throughout the state of New York at the mere age of 17 years old.
Latin Kings became a presence on Rikers Island around like 91, 92. We were few, but we were bad.
I fought with everyone, anyone who I thought that was a threat. I immediately jumped on them and I tried to take them out the count. And I thought that by fighting all the time and controlling, releasing my stress, I thought I was somebody, because inside Rikers Island, you become a ghetto superstar. That's Benny Blanco from Brooklyn. That's, you know, that's that Latin King cat.
It was rough, because if you wasn't a Latin King, or you wasn't part of a group, you had to have a lot of respect in order to walk the yard, in order to do certain things.
I went there, I went to his house, it was all Spanish. As soon as I got there, got into a fight instantly, because I was the only black person there. And Rikers has a unique system of structure there, so they make the biggest gang the house gang. So the first cells on the block is for house gang, so you get the first cells. You get to lock everybody else in at 10 o'clock, and you get to stay out to 11 or 12, cleaning, quote unquote, the dorm or the hallway. So what corrections did is that they instilled that into the highest gangs that was there. At the time, it was Latino gangs. Blacks started feeling it into the prison more, and they created this system called brotherly love overrides oppressive destruction, which stood for blood. And it became a union so that if you got in trouble in the streets, then you had a family inside the prison system too.
When I became a blood, now it was more so I had an authority. Now I am the authority. And that culture is just very much different, because it's like the worse you do, the bigger you are. At that point, we weren't the strongest. We weren't the most. It was a gang that was bigger than us. There was a Hispanic gang, the Latin Kings. They were the majority. We were the minority. I ended up putting in a lot of work, and by putting the work, I mean a lot of physical contact, a lot of violence, a lot of stabbings, a lot of cuttings. So now when I say jump, now it's for real. Now it's you're gonna jump. And if you don't do it, I got 35 other people in here that's gonna make you do it.
When the Bloods were created, it was putting fear in a lot of people. It was very few of our people who stood their ground.
And it became this whole type of system that was with the Latin gangs 10 years prior, was now with the Bloods and the Crips and other gangs, where they had control, and the officers gave them power, gave them drugs, gave them influence, right? And the C.E.Os always was the oppositional gang. Whether they was a secret member of this gang, they was an entire gang themselves, and that's the way they portrayed themselves.
There's a saying that it doesn't matter if you have a uniform on, right? That says correction officer, or one that says inmate. You're still doing time.
Well, being an inmate and being a C.E.O. is like a very thin line. Time stops for them too when they come to Rikers Island. It's only one bridge in and one bridge out. There's some C.E.Os that are real cool. You know, there's some C.E.Os that really understand the system, and they try to prevent these young people from coming back by talking to them.
The majority of the officers on Rikers Island are minorities. They come from where we come from. They grew up where we grew up at. Somehow they just never made it to prison.
My aunts and my sister, captives on Rikers Island, and my dad and my mom, federal court officers. Because I couldn't tell anybody I was related to this person. I would just see, you know, family in the corridor while I'm going to eat and just give them the wink.
You know, I don't bought drugs from correction officers who told me they're gonna send me to the box if I don't pay them, you know, things like that. And all of that made me say, well, you know, you're just like me, you know, we're all criminals in here.
I remember when the security officers, the head of security, left me an Allen key to open my window frame so I could hide my pouches in the frame of the window.
Rikers Island is a multi-billion-dollar industry, not just for the city and the county, but also for drugs and corruption. You say a $5 bag of weed in the streets is actually $100 on Rikers Island. A $11 pack of cigarettes is almost $200 on Rikers Island. So you do the math on that, and you say to yourself, as a correctional officer or any civilian worker, if I just bring in 4 packs of cigarettes, which cost me $44, $1,000.
And they'll bet on the fights. The officer would be like, yo, 5 cell versus 10 cell. The officers will let them out, and then they'll fight.
Corrections got their own rules. It's a book that they give you, and they don't follow none of them rules in that book. They got their own rules. Once one of them pop on you, they all popping on you. There's nothing around it. If you can get around it, you're very lucky, because they will body you in there. And if you don't know what body mean, I mean killed. I mean tell your mother you in medical, but you in the morgue.
The C.E.Os is the gang. They was the ones that, if you don't listen to what we say, we beating you up. We gonna come in here with shields on and so what, you're 17 years old, we're gonna bust you upside your head.
One time they had came inside the cell, maybe 6 officers. They threw me to the back of the cell, pushed my panties to the side, pushed their fingers in my anus, and just dragged me all up and down the cell. And I was screaming, help me, help me, they're raping me, they're raping me. And one of the inmates was saying, get the off, get the off, I'm gonna tell my lawyer, I'm gonna tell my lawyer. And when she said that, that's what made them run out the cell.
As I'm walking towards the cage, I noticed there's a plexiglass divider in the center of the cell. And I asked him, what's that? He says, that's something new that we're trying out, and you're gonna be the guinea pig. So I laughed with him, we laughed. The plexiglass divider was about nose high, I'd say. After you sit down, me and my visitor couldn't hear each other. So we leaned forward. He tells me to sit back. I comply. I leaned forward again about 3 or 4 minutes later because we couldn't hear each other. What he did was he turned to his partner. He said, that's it. Next thing I know, I'm off my feet. He had me by the neck, off my feet against a gate. I broke his hold. I landed on my feet. His partner swiped my feet from under me. I landed on my head and on my neck. I lost consciousness.
I was literally hogtied of like the 2 long sticks, like handcuffed, like carried like that. Literally carried like that, through the mag, banging my face on the mag.
I'm like a roasted pig, and I'm just like in the air like that.
Officers almost killed me. They carried me in that cell and they beat me up. Everybody's punching me. I went to sleep. And then next thing you know, I woke up, pants almost off my ass, pissed on myself. Like fighting for my life, feeling like I'm fighting to breathe.
They're just kicking me, they're spitting on me, they're hitting me with their walkie-talkies, and they're just hitting me with it. Boom! I couldn't block it, so I'm just like this. The only way I could block it is like this, but they're hitting me all over here. Boom, boom, boom. That's how I lost my tooth. My face was like this.
I came back to when I was struggling with a concussion. I was struggling with trying to walk. Couldn't walk, I didn't feel my legs. I had multiple contusions from my chest, my back, my neck. I get migraine headaches for days. I got sciatic nerve issues. One day is good, one day is not. Today I could walk, tomorrow I can't.
I would say I was being beat up for maybe 4 minutes, 5 minutes straight. They broke a bone in my back. They broke my nose. Probably didn't seen a picture of me. Probably don't look nothing like, kind of handsome right now, right? Yeah, but I was in a wheelchair for about a month and a half, 2 months.
After that, I didn't even sleep. Like, that one experience taught me that, you can never be sound asleep in prison. You always have to be a light sleeper. You always have to be on point, even in your sleep, even when you think you're secure. You're really not secure.
The only way I could get back at them was by either filing a grievance, which is a joke, or by filing a lawsuit. So I filed a lawsuit. The officers really did a number on me that time. They brought me down to solitary. Solitary confinement is rough, man. You can really go crazy.
On Rikers Island, they sent you to solitary confinement, really for anything.
If you ain't never been around death or like somebody else dying, like, then it's hard to hear somebody down to like two cell doors down from you has hung up. He's fed up. He couldn't do it. He ain't even had that much time. Brother was just doing 7 months. But 90 days in a box will kill you. 2 days in a box will kill you.
I was sentenced to 1,580 days in solitary confinement. Almost 4 years.
They have something called the Why Me pins, because it's a very small holding cell that they have you in when you weigh in to go to the box. And the reason why they call it Why Me, because they said a very, very long time ago in Rikers Island history that they would have people sitting in that cell for so long that they would just start saying to themselves, why me, out loud.
I'm in solitary. I can't call my family. I'm not getting any visits. So, you know, questions run through my mind of like, well, why me? What am I into? How did I get myself into this? How did I get myself out of this? What is this? I just got very depressed.
My longest stretch as an adolescent was 120 days. When you first enter the box, it's like a very dark and gloomy place. I mean, it kind of replicates a jail cell. It's just a little bit smaller. Floors is gray, walls is like a dark, dingy color. It's all gloomy. So it's just, it's meant and designed to keep you down. You hear people out the window screaming all day. You hear people on your tears screaming all day.
I walk into the box and it's like, people, it's noisy. It's like everybody's screaming and it just sounds like a madhouse and just, ah. I went into the cell and the cell closes. And then just that sound that the cell, like that sound that the cell makes when it closes is like, it's a crazy sound.
It sounds like a dog kennel. Like imagine like 20 different breeds of dogs on the same so-called tier in cages and hearing just so many different, you know, sounds of barking. That's what it begins to sound like, you know. It's madness.
What I found myself doing was pacing back and forth, talking to myself, doing push-ups, reading whenever I could get something to read. You're only given 2 showers a week. You sleep until you can't sleep no more, and then you're awake until you can't take it anymore, and you just wound up just, you know, you either count the cockroaches that come under your door, or you start counting the cracks in the wall, anything to keep your mind occupied.
I used to look at, you know, like paint chips on the wall, and they would become figurines. You look long enough and, you know, hard enough, you know, they start moving around there. You know, so now all of a sudden you got your own private movie theater.
I was laying down and I saw a piece of yellow rice moving. So I'm like, why is that yellow rice moving on the floor? Why is that yellow rice moving on the floor? I said, oh no, I'm hallucinating. Wait a minute, we haven't had yellow rice in weeks. Wait a minute, I don't even drop food on the floor. I eat over the tray. That's not rice. Then I'm talking to myself, Candy, it is rice. No, it's not rice. Yes, it is rice. So I'm like, that is rice. So I don't know if you ever saw Sesame Street, the little worm that used to jump up and down. The rice was jumping up and down like that little worm. So I'm like, rice doesn't move. Now, any logical person knows rice doesn't move. So I'm like, that rice is moving. So I get up and I bang on the window door and I tell one of the officers, I said, look, I need to see a therapist. And she says, why? I said, I'm hallucinating. I said, I think I saw a piece of rice moving. She said, oh no, girl, that's a maggot.
Then you just go through all these different mixed emotions and feelings. Frustrated, angry, pissed, sad, depressed. Did I say anxious? Your conversation even starts to change. When I would go on visits and I'm sitting with my family members when they would come see me. It's like, yeah, you heard? You heard? You hear me? You hear me? Repeating a lot of the stuff that I was saying twice, and they're looking at me like I'm crazy. But to me, this was normal because this is the conversation in the box.
When you're in there for that amount of time, you tend to lose who you are. You tend to lose your identity. You start regressing, and you start doing things that are not normal of a human being. You start playing with feces. You start counting the different holes in the wall. You start befriending the roaches and the rats that come through. You start feeding them You know, you begin to embrace this type of lifestyle.
I remember one time they gave me a milk carton, and the C.E.O, he didn't want to give me my food because we had an argument the day before. So he said, "Oh, you getting this milk?" Okay, cool, give me the milk. Gave me 2 milk cartons, I drank both of them, and I gave him one back. He didn't even realize that I kept one. So what I did was, over the next 4 or 5 days, I would urinate and defecate inside this milk carton and save it and let it pile up and build up. And I took the milk carton, I seen him when he walked past my cell, and I shook it up. And I called his name. And when he came back, I'm like, "Yo, open the slot. I had left something in here." So when he opened it, he stuck his face down and I shot him in the face with it. I just squeezed it. And when it hit his face, oh man, I seen a look in his eyes of disgust. Because when I squeezed it, he had his head turned to the side, so it got in his eyes, his nose, his mouth, it's dripping in his hair. As bad as he wanted to open that cell door and beat me, he couldn't. Because the cameras was in the hallway.
I really did feel like my mind was breaking down because my body was also breaking down as well, because the portions that they feed you in the box is smaller than what they feed you in general population. So you have to make sacrifices when it's child time. Like, you get 2 pieces of bread, but you're starving at that moment. You want to eat everything, and you know this isn't going to fill you up, but you have to eat a small portion, and you have to put the bread off to the side for later. I'm not necessarily going to say I lost my sanity completely, but I know it was being chipped away, little by little.
This is so loud, and it's 1,000 cells, 100 people per floor, literally just floor after floor, people yelling, trying to yell over each other. For me, that was like everyone was yelling at me. It was like 100 people talking about me, because these other voices in my head are a negative influence. You know, they're not saying, "Five, you're great." They're like, "Look, they're talking about you. They're gonna cut you as soon as you get out of here. As soon as you walk out, they're gonna punch you in the face. Watch that tray, watch that slide. He's gonna open the slide, he's gonna put gas in it. What is that in there?" And this is going on constantly, 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 constantly. The door, the wind under the door, the toilet dripping, the sink that doesn't flush, the banging on the vent from the guy upstairs, the kid with the battery downstairs that's on the door, like he's losing his mind, so he's just doing beats to keep check. All of that is one pressurized environment that you can't escape, and you end up just trying to hide under the covers, trying to hide yourself from the light, trying to hide yourself from the bombardment that you can't stop.
It was crazy, just dudes screaming all night, kicking on the cell doors. Got rappers, they jailhouse rappers, and talking all night long, all night, like you just couldn't get sleep. You can't sleep at night in the box. You have to sleep in the daytime. I remember getting up and walking, pacing back and forth and just ranting, and to the point where I just got so furious, I started kicking on my cell door, kicking on the door. The C.E.Os came by, and they trying to tell me calm down. I'm telling them, nah, that. They're like, "Yo, we're gonna have to come in there, and we're gonna have to calm you down." And I'm just going off, I'm going off. And they got this shield, and he's like, "Yo, we're gonna come in." And they came and they opened it, hit me. And I remember they knocked me out. I was out for a while. I got up, my head was hurting. And I was just kept saying to myself, like, "Yo, I gotta get out of there," because now I'm starting to be like those guys.
I was just like getting overwhelmed from being in the box, and I was there for so long. I'm told, "Yo, I gotta get the f out of here. Yo, this is bugged out. It's driving me crazy."
I have very vivid nightmares that I'm either swallowing my tongue or my head's being decapitated. So I started cutting myself. The ID cards they give you are kind of like a credit card. If you sit there long enough rubbing back and forth, you will rip your skin. You get this ache in your chest. It's hard to explain, but it's like this ache. And it's not a physical thing. And you can't, it doesn't go away no matter what you do. It just doesn't go away. And by cutting, it relieves the pain. It relieves the pain.
Sometimes you'll figure, I may be better off if I'm not living, than feeling like you're dehumanizing because you have to put your milk carton inside of the toilet to keep it cold, and it's the same place you take a dump. I'm thinking about doing something negative. You understand what I'm saying? Not doing something positive, because how could you think about doing something positive when you have nothing positive being locked into a box?
I heard somebody died. He was Dominican, he didn't speak English, and the officer told him to do something, gave him an order, but he just stood there and didn't move. But I don't think it was because he was trying to be, rebellious. I don't think he understood what was said. And they went in the cell and they was beating him with the sticks, right? It was like 3 of them. And the sticks would miss him, hit the wall, and it would reverberate through my cell. It was just like, and I heard his like cries, and it was crazy because people just came out of their cells and went on with their day. People were like, yo, who got Kool-Aid? Somebody got cigarettes? Like, nobody missed a step. It was just business as usual after that.
You want to hold on to that understanding that this is insane, because if you lose it, then you kind of become conformed to it. And once that happens, there is no, redemption or rehabilitation, as they like to say. Because it's not meant for you to change for the better.
I started to feel like an animal. You leave an animal in the cage long enough, when you open the cage door, they won't even come out. And if they do come out, they tiptoe around and they go right back. And I felt like that, and I wanted to break that cycle. I wanted to break out of that. It was like bondage to me. It was like slavery.
I couldn't see the day where I was gonna get out. Rikers Island is a place where a lot of people don't have distinct time. They don't have direct time. I know guys who've been there for 5 or 6 years fighting a case that they're innocent for.
I remember there was a time where I actually contemplated suicide. And I remember my mom coming to see me, and she grabbed me by my shoulders. And she told me, man, she said, if you don't give up on yourself, I'm never gonna give up on you. She said, do what you have to do to survive, but make it home in one piece. And that voice right there, she says, please, she begged me. She says, come home, because I'm not gonna be able to take it if they take you away from me and you take your own life. And I kept hearing that small, still voice in my mind while I was in the Bay. And little did I know that, it was God that kept talking to her and talking to me not to give up.
What I used to see was from Rikers Island and most of the buildings I've been to, I could definitely see the airport, and I hated seeing the planes take off and land. I hated that, because I always wanted to know, where they going, man? Where they coming from? They coming from vacation, a nice tropical island, and I can always see the Empire State Building. They lighted up different colors, and I used to just stare at the city and wonder, how is life for somebody right now, and what are they doing versus what am I doing right now, looking out this window from jail into that free world.
The system, jail and prison, is designed to keep us going in and out. That's why they have revolving doors when you go to court. So it'll be a young person that I was with, right? He'll be here for about, say, a month and a half, 2 months. He'll go home for 2 weeks, right back. When he comes back, yeah, I'm back in the building. Like, so pretty much what you're telling me is you went on a 2-week vacation home and now you're back at your real home.
You have all the plans in the world, but the main plan is to stay free out of prison. And being released out here where there's no one at, there's no
nobody that's gonna help you if you need some help because no one knows you. And you're so nervous being back out in society after being in jail, even if it's just for one night. It's overwhelming.
I remember being on that bus, not wanting to look back, you know, but being able to see so much, because, you know, the sights, the sounds, the smell, everything is assaulting me at one time, you know, and it was like paralyzing because it's like my head is snapping everywhere, and then I'm on this bus just doing this.
I got off the bus. It was the weirdest thing. I was standing there, and the guy was like, "What are you doing?" And I realized that it was a yellow line, and I got off the bus and just dropped my draft bag and just was like, programmed not to cross this line for so long because you can't cross your lines in jail.
You know, when you coming from jail, you're not used to being around nobody but so many people. So I guess that's just like an adjustment that you will go through the first month. That's like the adjustment of learning how to stop taking showers with your slippers on, you know, when you first go, having your underwears on when you take, you know, I've made the mistakes or throwing my spoon in the garbage, and little things like that.
I came home June 21st, 2010. Came home dressed in all white, you know, the rebirth. When I had finally got back home and stuff, and I got around a couple of the people that actually knew me and knew the scenario, it was like, damn, you did all that time for something that you ain't even do. It's like, it is what it is. Just gotta move forward from this point. Can't cry over spilled milk. Just gotta get some napkins and wipe it up, right?
Coming home, it was hard for me to readjust. I didn't like being around people. I didn't want to share anything with anybody, like my thoughts. I didn't want to be around my own family. Like, it was just really, really hard for me to talk to people. I wanted to use violence for everything that was wrong.
My brother and my sister will have nothing to do with me. My husband's family will have nothing to do with us, my husband and my daughter included. It's very difficult. My husband and I are currently separated.
I was a stranger in a strange land. I didn't understand the language. I didn't understand. It was difficult. To this time, I still sometimes have difficulty. Last night, I went with my wife. I took her we were on a date. We were just walking in Rockefeller Center, and it was too much people, and I became tense, and I was like, she had to hold my hand, and she says, hey, it's easy, baby, it's easy. Just let's go.
And then I remember one day, you know, I said, let me go outside. So I go outside by myself, and I got halfway, not even halfway on the block, and I couldn't walk any further. There was nothing stopping me, you know, but it was like a barrier that prevented me from getting any further. And I wanted to move further, but I couldn't. And I was kind of frustrated. I'm like, what is wrong? So I went back upstairs and I just started crying.
Unless you've experienced coming home from jail or prison, you'll never know what it's like. You don't know what it's like to go looking for a job, and everywhere you turn, every door you open, they look at you differently and say no to you. They don't know what it's like to be hungry and have no food on the table for your family, but you out there struggling looking for a job. I've always said, you know, it's great. Everybody's talking about these 6,000 inmates that are being released, but what are you putting in place for them to come home to?
I said to myself, I ain't going back to jail, you know, especially after what I just experienced, you know, so I'd rather die in these streets before I go back into them jails.